Amid the Sweet Baby Inc. trying to cancel KabrutusRambo and get his Steam curator list shut down, as well as his entire Steam account shut down, the Anti-Defamation League has called on the U.S. government to regulate online video games. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. I wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And the Anti-Defamation League posted this on X a couple days ago. It reads, as digital social spaces, online games should be regulated to address hate and extremism. It's vital for Congress to examine extremist radicalization in these spaces. And we are grateful to Representative Lori Trahan. She is a Democrat out of Massachusetts, for leading this effort. An important piece to read. And then links to an article published in The Hill, not by Lori Trahan, but by an activist named Mariana Olazola. I'm not sure how to say that. Rosenblatt. Rosenblatt was awarded a fellowship from the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowships for New Americans in 2017. Paul Soros is the older brother of Democrat billionaire George Soros. She was allegedly awarded the fellowship to obtain her law degree from Yale Law. She was previously a Global Human Rights Clinic Fellow and lecturer at the University of Chicago. According to her LinkedIn, she is currently a policy advisor on technology and law at the NYU Stern Center for Business and Human Rights. In the article, Rosenblatt writes this: discussions of harms in gaming historically have focused on fears about the content of the games themselves. However, the social environment of games is what actually poses significant threats to players' safety and well-being. Exposure to hateful speech is routine, while doxing, exposing someone's private, identifying information, and physical threats are also common. Of acute concern is mounting evidence that extremists and other bad actors take advantage of the pre-existing toxic gamer culture to disseminate their hateful ideologies and unleash hate-based harassment. It's really interesting that this is what Rosenblatt is writing, when it's actually video game companies like Sweet Baby Inc. that are going after video game players like KabrutusRambo, literally trying to steal his game catalog that is on Steam, get it shut down. Sweet Baby Inc. employee Chris Kindred made it very clear that's exactly what he wanted to do, was calling for the reporting of his account, as well as the Steam curator list that he created. We also had Sweet Baby Inc. employee Maya Kramer calling for authorities, people in authority, to step in and have him be punished. She didn't really explain exactly what, but it's clear that wanted him punished for that. Get back to the article here, though. Rosenblatt shares her aims. Regulators should consider online games fair game for regulation. Indeed, it is unclear why games are typically excluded from the same regulatory approaches that apply to social media, since online multiplayer games are social platforms. Online games nominally fall within the scope of the Digital Services Act, and the regulations enforcers should ensure that game companies comply with its extensive requirements, including publishing human rights risk assessments, removing illegal content, countering disinformation and extremism, issuing transparency reports, and providing data to vetted independent researchers. This law provides a significant regulatory push for game companies to put in place responsible business practices or policies and practices. So obviously trying to expand the scope of that Digital Services Act to include video game or online video games now, which would be a lot, right? I mean, most video games now have some kind of online function or some kind of multiplayer function, even though they might be more predominantly used in a solo player mode. I'm thinking of something like Genshin Impact. A lot of mobile games obviously are usually single player stuff, but they have multiplayer aspects where you're usually going up against another person's team in some kind of PvP, even though they're not actually like playing against you in real time, things like that. This push comes in the wake of the ADL publishing a so-called report titled Hate is No Game, Hate and Harassment in Online Games 2023. They published that on February 6, 2024. They've been publishing this for a number of years now. The report's executive summary declares hate and harassment in gaming is now so pervasive that it has become the norm for many players. An estimated 83 million of the 110 million online multiplayer games in the U.S. were exposed to hate and harassment over the last 6 months. 3 out of 4 young people ages 10 to 17 experience harassment when playing video games. So I think all of this is a bunch of bunk and lies, and we'll get to this. But this is connected to the Sweet Baby Inc. here stuff, which is really interesting because if you look at this person, Dr. Rachel Coward, I don't know if I made a video about her, but I've definitely written an article about her. She's actually, I think, one of the founders of Take This, or heavily involved with this organization called Take This that defended Sweet Baby Inc. And that company actually received funds from the Department of Homeland Security, from the U.S. government, to fund similar research to this ADL report to find extremism in gaming. Like, that's specifically what that money was for. And she's defending Sweet Baby Inc. ADL is coming out with their report about a month right ahead of this Sweet Baby Inc. stuff. Sweet Baby Inc.'s coming out, and then ADL in the middle of all this stuff is calling for a regulation of the video games, right? It's all a coincidence. It's all a coincidence. And what's interesting about Rachel Cowart is she said that a previous ADL report is the entire reason why she formed Take This. So during a Game UX 2022 presentation, she said this. In 2019, the Anti-Defamation League reported that nearly 1 in 4 was 23% of game players are exposed to white supremacist ideology in game. And honestly, somebody asked me earlier how I got into this work because it seems like a very niche area, but it was this report. And when I saw that, I thought that number is so high. It can't be that high. It can't possibly be that high. And I called Daniel Kelly, who led this research, who's a member of the ADL, or at least was at the time. And he was like, no, that's the number. And I was like, okay, we have to do something about that. That's terrifying. Ironically, she would go on to admit the reporting and research of the ADL was suspect. She said in 2021, they did another report looking at the same thing, and they found the number was closer to 1 in 10, but it's unclear whether this is actually a change in the landscape or just differences in sampling, as it is with research sometimes. So remember, she was looking at this report in 2019, saying that around 1 in 4 players had been exposed to white supremacist ideology in game. Now, in this 2023 report that they pushed out just last month, it's claiming that 1 in 4 players are exposed to hate and harassment while playing online multiplayer games, and they're saying an estimated 83 million. Well, let's get into what how they actually do their methodology, right? This is published in the report, which I'll share in the description below. But it's all based off of a survey conducted by an organization called Newzoo, based off of 1,971 respondents between the ages of 10 through 45. And then they did a separate little survey where they oversampled, quote, on key interest groups, including Jewish, Muslim, LGBTQ+, Black, African American, and Hispanic Latino, to ensure we had enough respondents belonging to these minority groups to be able to examine responses within these groups during analysis. From there, the ADL, they just straight up admit to manipulating the data. They say the final data set, including the oversampled population, which came to 2006, was then weighed so that the demographic distribution of our final data set matched the demographic distribution of our initial gamer set. This involved reapplying weights based on 5 variables: age, gender, ethnicity, religion, and sexual orientation, using a rake algorithm to give each respondent a weight. So it's a bunch of technical terms to admitting that they basically just cooked the books on all of this data to ensure they got the results that they wanted. And honestly, they should just delete this entire report because it's just a bunch of phony baloney. This is obviously all at the end of the report after they've made all of their claims and their assertions, all of their prejudices and biases that they are now positing as truth based on a survey of around 2,000 people that they had to oversample and then cook the books in order to even get. I mean, what a bunch of crap. And this is why this woman was even involved in this entire industry, based off of a bunch of lies. And then she's defending an organization by lying through omission. She's defending Sweet Baby Inc. by lying through omission. So, I mean, all these people are just absolute liars. They're all connected through a web of lies. You just really can't make it up. And now they're trying to get the U.S. government. So they're using government money. They're inspiring people to get government money to find all of this stuff. And then they're lobbying the government based on the money that they get to, to regulate these online games these online games. So they literally are getting paid by the government to find a problem. They create the problem through their phony baloney surveys and research. They then lobby the government using their phony baloney research to say, oh, we have this problem, you need to regulate it. And so now they're going to try and get the government to regulate this fake problem that the government paid them to create in the first place. I mean, you really can't make it up. This is sort of an absolute boondoggle. It's a complete and utter joke. This stuff really needs to be just completely taken a pickaxe to and like wiped out. I mean, it's obviously sick and disgusting how these activist organizations work, how they steal taxpayer money to enrich themselves and then use that money to persecute the taxpayers. I mean, what an utter boondoggle. Yeah, you really can't make this stuff up. It's truly sickening, and it's coming to your video games. It's already here. It's already here with your video game. Sweet Baby Inc. obviously an example of that. But let me know what you guys make of what the ADL is doing in the midst of this Sweet Baby Inc. Persecution of KabrutusRambo. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be truthful, but to always be charitable.